I'm Brandon Martin, your Republican candidate in Arizona's 2nd District. Welcome to the Liberty Patrol. Mount up.
One, two, three, four, hey! 1, 2, 3, 4, hey! 1, 2, 3, 4, hey! Here we go! Here we go! Here we go! Here we go! On the move! On the move! In the groove! In the groove! In the groove! In the groove! Here we go! Here we go! All the way! All the way! Every day! Every day! Huh!
Morning. I'm here with Cheryl Todd, host of Gun Freedom Radio, and her husband Dan own two stores, AZ Firearms and Pot of Gold Auctions. Good morning. Welcome, Cheryl.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me on, Brandon. I am excited to dive into our conversation today.
Thank you for being here. It's truly a pleasure to speak with you today. Just jumping right in, why is the Second Amendment your top issue?
Well, I mean, it really should be a top issue for everyone who believes in our constitutional rights and the Bill of Rights. And I think that's kind of the core of everything for me, is that, you know, this big, huge, thick document that way too many of us do not take the time to read. It takes maybe an hour and a half to read the entire Constitution and Bill of Rights, and too many of us don't do that. And when you understand that the Bill of Rights is actually a firewall that tells the government, no, you don't get to come on this side and tell us what to do in our personal lives. And the Second Amendment is in the Bill of Rights. So it's on our side, the citizen side of that firewall. And, really, when it comes to politicians, and I make a huge distinction between a politician and someone who is a public servant, right? They have sought office to serve the public, to be a true representative of their constituency. So when a politician goes against the oath that they took to uphold, protect, defend, support this document and everything in it, by infringing on the Second Amendment, it tells me everything I need to know about them. That they are, first of all, lying when they take their oath. Second of all, that they are seeing their position as a place of power over their constituency. And it tells me how they view me as their constituent, as though I am in some way subservient to them, like a child. So I have to go to them and say, oh, please, sir, may I please have my rights that our founding fathers fought, bled, starved, and died for? So you could probably say I'm a little bit passionate about the Second Amendment. Kind of came out a little bit strong first thing in the morning, but that's truly how I feel about it. It is that important, and it is kind of the or else to all of the other amendments, all of our other rights, you know?
Great. I agree with you. It is very important. It is there to protect us from a tyrannical government because we do have natural God-given rights, and that Constitution is there to tell the government you will not infringe on these rights. This is what you're capable. This is what you're capable of. This is what you can do, or as we'd say in the military, your left and right limits. And so, I think people have forgotten that because some people truly believe that government gives them rights. We have these rights regardless. They can't be taken away. They can't be given away. And like you mentioned, our founders fought, bled, and died to make sure they were protected. So it's early in the morning, but great conversation. And, right now we're moving into the presidential election. Joe Biden looks like he will most likely be the Democrat nominee. And so how would you, as a freedom-loving patriot that believes in the Constitution, how would you respond to people that call Joe Biden a moderate?
Well, first of all, I would probably point them to an interview he did recently where he actually very forcefully pushed back on the interviewer. And he said, I have been a progressive for a long time. I don't know where you get off calling me a moderate. So we could just quote himself. And then when you talk about his stance on the Second Amendment, he's been a disaster since way back. But most recently, he talked about, we're going to reach out, my campaign, me personally, we're going to reach out to Beto O'Rourke to take care of the gun problem. I think I'm quoting exactly. And for those who have already, moved on and completely forgotten who this Beto O'Rourke character is, when he was on the platform campaigning and debating to be one of the nominees for the Democratic Party for president, he said, quote unquote, and pardon my foul language, but he said, hell yes. That's him. He said, hell yes, I am coming after your AR-15s. Poor Joe Biden thinks they're AR-14s, but whatever. We can come back to that. And your AK-47. So, Joe Biden wants to align with someone who wants to use the power of his position, should he have gained it, in order to reach into your home and remove something that you own. Now, it doesn't matter, it shouldn't matter whether it's a firearm or what it is. We should be able to see past, even if I'm someone that thinks guns should not exist and I don't like the idea that people own guns. If you can't see past that and understand the underlying issue, that someone who has been elected to represent us wants to reach into your home, because if they can get you to nod your head and smile and agree that, yeah, you should reach into that gun owner's home and take their property, you're also telling them that they have the power to reach into your home and take your property. You're just blinded for a moment because he happens to be talking about something you don't like, which is the gun.
Well, those are good points. And to jump into something else that we don't like, what do you think about Arizona's red flag laws that have been pushed recently by different politicians? I mean, it scares me. What do you think about them?
Red flag laws are just bad and dangerous from start to finish, top to bottom. And I can speak for a very long time on this particular topic. One of the reasons I can speak on it is because it's being pushed as, and here in Arizona, Doug Ducey, our governor, God bless him, he wears the big red R on his chest, and so we're supposed to believe that he stands for all of our constitutional rights and all of our those things that we believe in as conservatives. But he gets real squishy on certain things, and gun rights are one of those things that he gets squishy on. So he says, don't worry, we're not going to have any red flag laws in Arizona. Now, stop laws, now that's something that's important, and it's important enough that he's tried to hide it into an education bill. And so if you have to hide something anywhere, that tells you right there's something not quite palatable about it. So don't be tricked or fooled when you hear red flag gun laws. If you hear ERPOs, right? Extreme, I forget what that actually stands for, restraining order, protection order, an ERPO, or a stop law. All of those are the same thing. And here's why they're bad. We can start with right now in the moment in history we're living in with this crazy COVID-19 thing, and people are on not house arrest, but it feels like that to a lot of us. We're stay at home orders and that sort of thing. In Los Angeles, I know we're talking about Arizona, but in Los Angeles, the mayor, what's his name? Eric Garcetti, he has made a public statement that snitches get rewards. So these snitches that he's looking for are people that will tell on their neighbors and their the business owners in their area for leaving their home, right? For coming outside and having fresh air or trying to conduct their business. So if we think that people aren't going to be snitches for something that simple, if we don't think that's going to apply to these red flag gun laws, we are really not paying attention. So what is a red flag gun law? Why do we care about them? Why do I say they're bad? Well, I'm a gun store owner. I'm an auction house owner. My husband and I are co-hosts on Gun Freedom Radio, but my degrees are all in psychology and counseling. So I come at this from a little bit different perspective. When you're someone who has studied the human animal and behavior and drivers of behavior, you understand that psychologists are the first people to step up and say that we are terrible predictors. We do not have a crystal ball. We cannot tell you when somebody or if somebody is going to be a danger to self or others. There are certain, little things that we can say, well, maybe this person needs a little extra care at this time. But for us to be able to say, and what these red flag gun laws say, is that a friend or a neighbor or a coworker can say, Joe just doesn't seem right. So instead of saying, Joe just doesn't seem right, maybe we need to use a law that's already in place here in Arizona and have him, maybe committed for a while. No, they say, let's go in and confiscate his property. Let's go into his home and let's take his guns, right? So the law that they could use is the Arizona Title 36 530B. That allows for individuals deemed at extreme risk to be detained for 72 hours. So that's a reasonable thing. If someone is if you're really afraid that someone's a threat to self or others, we have to stay focused on the person. But these red flag gun laws, these stop laws, these ERPOs, they focus on the tool, a specific tool. So let's suppose that with badges and guns, they kick in the door of the person who's supposedly a threat. They come in and they take some guns. How many guns? We don't know. How many guns does a person own? Nobody needs to know that. Nobody should know that. And I'm pretty sure there's not a really good way to know that. So they take the guns they know about, and then suddenly the person is supposed to be totally healthy and well and no longer a threat to self or others. You've still left the knives, you've left the rope, you've left the car in the enclosed garage, all the ways that people hurt themselves and hurt others. And another thing that is completely missed in all of this is that, I feed my neighbor's fish a couple blocks away when they're out of town, and maybe they own guns. Well, how many guns do they own? Are they going to go confiscate those guns as well? There's just no way to confiscate enough property to prevent somebody from doing what they say this law is supposed to do. And that is to prevent someone from being a threat to self or others. The only way, it's just completely wrong focused. It has to be focused on the person, not on the tool.
I agree with you on that, and I would even go further. I would say that many people out there, and whatever the circumstances, when they're emotional, they may be thinking of a decision. Oh, I'm going to get a divorce, or I'm going to close my business because I'm struggling and I haven't been able to make payroll or whatever it is. And then after they let the emotion settle, they think better of it. They think logically, and they say, you know what, I can't go through with this. I've got to tough this out. And so we really, when you're talking about detaining someone because they could potentially do damage to something or someone, that's very scary, because now you're not even committing a crime. Now you're just being detained. And we could go into all the different areas there where liberty is infringed on. But the thing is, the purpose of government is to protect life, liberty, and property, period, from the city up to the federal level. And we need more people to know that so we can hold our government officials accountable.
Well,
And this, is a big issue for both of us. So go ahead.
absolutely. And please don't hear me to say or understand me to say that I am in favor of detaining people. I'm just saying, if you really think that somebody is that far gone that you would reach into their home and confiscate their property, that you need to understand that you also need to know that there's this other law that you could use if they're really that bad. And if that sounds like extreme to you, you know, you can't lock Joe up because I'm nervous about his behavior. Well, then you also can't confiscate his property.
No, and that's what I understood you to say. And we've seen examples of this here in the United States. I remember during Hurricane Katrina and the aftermath, I remember government going in and infringing on people's rights and taking their property. It's happened. It's happened multiple times in this country. Unfortunately, we as the people who give government its power do not know as a collective what our rights truly are and what that means to be an American citizen sometimes. So that
Absolutely.
goes into our next question. What restrictions do you believe there should be on the Second Amendment?
Well, that is such a great question. And I always say, you know what, the men and women, our founding fathers and mothers, they earned the right to create this document. And, it's like, if only they had written down for us what they were thinking at the time that they had just pushed back tyranny from our shores. And if only they had given us, oh, there it is. There it is. Second Amendment, 27 words that end with the phrase shall not be infringed. So that's exactly where I stand with gun laws. I think every single one of them is an infringement. I think they are racist because they disproportionately affect lower socioeconomic communities that tend to be of different races. I think they're anti-woman. They go against our civil rights. They go against our human rights. So I think restrictions zero. Zero is how many I think is okay.
Well, we're in agreement there as well, and shall not be infringed is pretty clear, in my opinion. But some on the left, many on the left, just can't get that through their head because they have an agenda, and I think they understand it just fine. But it doesn't compute and doesn't figure into their plans. So you mentioned something in there. You mentioned women. And that brings up a topic that I think is very relevant to you and to this conversation. Gun ownership among women is on the rise and has been for a while. Why do you think that is, and why do you think that's important?
Well, I mean, there's lots of reasons. I think so many people who come to gun ownership, and we've had just millions in the last month who've come to gun ownership because they are understanding that with the weird world we're living in with this COVID-19, that they have to be their own immediate responder. And so every single person, whether male or female, when they've come to that decision that they want to take that responsibility on, it's as individual as the person. But women, as a general rule, tend to understand a few things. One is that predators do walk among us, and they look like normal people until they don't. And so predators generally target people who are smaller than them, people who are physically less strong than them. And so we understand that a firearm in the hands of a trained and responsible woman is the great equalizer. And so I think that is, for a lot of us, that is the thing. And I'm part of a group called the DC Project. I'm the Arizona delegate to this group. And it's women from every state who go to our nation's capital every year. I'm actually starting a state chapter soon here in Arizona of this very thing. We go to our capital and we try to form relationships with our representatives and help them understand that you know, I am a gun owner. I don't look like maybe the average gun owner because the caricature out there is, bearded, camoed, 50 and over dude. And, my little lady right here, that hashtag is polka dots are my camo, because I don't fit the mold. And there's a bunch of women that don't fit the mold. And a lot of the women who are in this group, the DC Project, they unfortunately have come to firearms ownership and understanding their rights better as a God-given thing and not a government-given thing, because they've had tragedy in their own lives. So that great equalizer, it's become, almost a cliche thing to say, but it's actually very true. And women, we're moms, we're daughters, we're sisters, we're nieces, we're aunts, and we have an innate protective nature. We call it, kind of the mama bear syndrome. And we were not, God didn't give us sharp teeth and sharp claws, but he gave us intellect. And we understand how to use our tools. We understand how to use our environment to our advantage. And so I think that is, the best way to explain why women would gravitate towards firearms, even when there's whole groups out there that try to shame us. They do a lot of this, women shaming and mom shaming with this moms demand some unnamed action. They really could pick a better name for the group, I think. But, they try to say that, good moms, we don't have those kinds of tools in our house. And at first blush, there's a lot of women that might gobble that down and say, oh, that's right. Oh, my goodness, I wouldn't let my child around something like that. As they open the drawer in their kitchen that's filled with every kind of knife on the planet and, watch their child, make their own lunch or whatever. It's about training. The DC Project, their hashtag is education, not legislation. So it's about training and education. And, how do we keep our children safe around pools, crossing roads, the knife drawer? We teach them how to interact with their environment. And so it's no different for guns. If you are a mom and you are feeling a little bit of that, that pressure from, well, good moms don't this, that, or whatever. I'm a good mom. I'm a good grandma, and I teach my child and my granddaughters how to interact safely with everything in their environment that I possibly can, and that includes firearms.
Well, Cheryl, you're also a great patriot. Thank you for everything you do, standing up for the American citizen, the residents of Arizona. Thank you so much for being with me here today. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate you so much. And stay healthy, stay safe, and God bless.